Welcome to the Village Green NBTV show on the environment. As you can see, we're here on a stormy day. And what we're going to talk about today is the general plan that we are currently working on. And there's a new committee formed, the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC. We've got 3 members. They're brand new to this process. They weren't part of the last GPAC. And we're going to get some of their thoughts on what's coming up. All right. I'm here with 3 members of our newly formed General Plan Advisory Committee. And I know a little bit about all of them, so I'm going to tell a little bit about all of them. And I'll start with Arlene because she actually has the longest history of involvement with the city. We first met on the EQAC, Environmental Quality Affairs Committee, and worked on the Green Building Subcommittee. Right. And then she followed her really, truly first love, which was the Arts Commission. And it's been very, very influential there, and particularly with the sculpture in the park. Kurt, I know from his 2 years now on the Coastal Bay Water Quality Committee, share a lot of interest in the coast and the surf and that sort of thing. And he's recently off a campaign as co-chair of the committee to elect Ron Caruso.
Yep, Rick Caruso,
excuse me, up in LA. Good effort.
Yeah, unfortunately lost, but yeah.
Yeah, and Lori is an attorney, although I don't think you practice right now.
Not right now.
Yeah. And an amazing jock. I played tennis with her, and she covers the court like nobody else. So that's how I know all of them. But today we're going to talk about the general plan, and we're going to start off first with a question of, what do you think of policy LU7? That's a joke.
Yeah. I'm going to let someone else go first.
Yeah, no. We're going to start off in general, and I'd like each of you to tell me why you applied. What is your expectation, sort of, generally, of the General Plan Advisory Committee?
Well, I guess I'll give that a go. I applied because I've served many years on the Arts Commission, and I thought perhaps I have visions that were never accomplished on the Arts Commission, and I thought maybe I could lend some input to the general plan that is being amended and redrafted, and perhaps on the arts and culture end, and maybe even so on the environmental end, because Nancy and I had served together on the Environmental Quality Affairs Committee. And I'm very much looking forward to adding to the beauty of our community, the aesthetics and the safety, and however we can just make it a better place to live.
That's great. If you don't mind, I'll take it. So Nancy, as you mentioned, I spent the last 2 years on the Water Quality Coastal Tidelands Committee, and I think through that experience, I've always been passionate about resilience and sustainability in our community. We're a coastal community. I was born on Balboa Island, grew up on the Diamond Avenue beach there, enjoying the harbor, and frankly, I believe that our city can do a lot more to invest in and support resilience efforts here in Newport Beach. A large percentage of our tax base and our real estate base is, less than 5 feet above or 10 feet above sea level. And so, I'm excited about looking at models of how other cities have approached sustainability and resilience and bring some of that development here. And, hopefully making us a city that can continue to enjoy our beaches long into the future.
Lori?
Okay. I wanted to serve on the committee because I have lived in Newport Beach for quite a long time. I've raised my 3 kids here, and I've practiced in the real estate law field for over 25 years. So I figured, given being a longtime resident and my experience in the legal community here, I could bring some input into my concerns that I have on what some of the state policies might be doing to our housing and density here in the city. I have a real concern over the loss of some of our recreation facilities, and I'm concerned that meeting the housing requirements of the state is going to really impact just the style of life we have here in Newport, and I wanted to bring some insight and make sure that we can kind of preserve that.
Okay, so then let's go and you get to do anything you want, basically, let's say. What is the one thing that you would like, the major thing you would like to see accomplished through the general plan this time? And it doesn't have to be about the environment, because everything affects the environment, actually. Mm-hmm. But is there one thing that you could pinpoint and say, this is what I really want to see us accomplish?
Well, I don't know if I can say that yet, because I haven't really sat down and looked at the whole situation and see what areas in the general plan are truly in jeopardy yet. I would just really want to bring my concern into, like, I don't want to lose any more open space. I don't want to lose any more park area. I don't want high density. And I don't know how we preserve that with the competing pressures from the state to put in, certain dwelling units and things that we have to accomplish over the next couple of years.
Well, one thing that will help you is, of course, the purchase of Banning Ranch, because that is absolutely now off the table
Right.
for development. So that will be preserved
Yeah.
as open space.
Absolutely.
Kurt, anything you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo what you said. This will be my first turn on the GPAC committee, so I, want to go in without too many assumptions. But like I mentioned before, I think there's great models out there for how other cities that are similarly exposed to coastline and to resilience risks have approached tackling those risks. I've looked at models from Virginia Beach, Virginia, Charleston, South Carolina, Miami, San Mateo, California, and there's some real commonalities in how those cities approach resilience. One is a vulnerability assessment that looks at all aspects of sustainability that the city can invest in together, bringing in universities to corroborate that assessment, and then kind of using that as a guideline for how to move forward. We've done some of that, but I would like to see kind of a centralized effort at where we are vulnerable so that we can move forward. And then from there, I think there's a little bit of a lack of ownership in the city on where resilience sits. There's a lot of different committees that have tasks that touch sustainability and resilience, but it's not the core of their business. And so I'd like to see, based on whatever that assessment looks like, maybe a fresh look at how we would approach resilience through the committees in our city, and maybe also through the city staff. There's cities out there that are our size and politically similar to us that will have a chief resilience officer that silos
Huntington Beach, for example.
Yeah, Huntington Beach does this. Many other cities have started to do this, where you silo the responsibility of resilience into a cost center in the city, and you kind of remove some of the perverse incentives that you might have of putting resilience as a sub bullet within one aspect of the city. So there's things like that we can learn from. I don't think that we're going to do all of it in one swoop, but it would be really nice to see us kind of look forward and chart a vision for what that might look like.
Oh, okay, you set me up. We had an editorial interjection here. That's why I'm hoping that in the end run we will have a sustainability element.
Yeah.
That there would be one section. Right now we have some element, environmental issues, but they are sort of spread throughout. And so if you're going to a grantor and wanting funds, and he says, how green is Newport Beach? You go, well, if you look at policy here and policy here, here's our sustainability element right there.
And you'll see too, like I'm sure you've seen this, but other cities too have put explicit resources on working directly with state and federal government. FEMA has a lot of resources that are out there, but they're somewhat complicated to unlock. So, siloing someone in the city who looks at how to unlock those resources full time, that's how other cities have approached it. I don't think we're there yet, but we have an opportunity to move forward.
Okay, and Arlene?
Well, I feel that one of our city's greatest assets is recreation in so many forms. Our beaches are beautiful. We have a beautiful civic center. We have 7 districts that are involved in arts and culture. And it's not just arts and culture that's important. It's what the community has to offer and what we have to offer the community. So I'm looking forward to serving on this committee and learning more from the members of the community as a result of what we're doing, and learning from the individual members on the committee so that I can better serve the committee, better serve the community, using resources from within the community to uplift the city to another level in not only arts and culture, our recreation, how we communicate with each other. And I too am very much looking forward to learning more about other cities. I've traveled a lot, and I've seen many things in other cities that I feel would be a good fit for here. And I'd just like to learn more about that when we get into our committee meetings, so that I can judge how others feel about some new ideas. And I'll not go into any specifics on new ideas, but we're missing an arts and culture center in our city. And I see that so many other communities bring the community together, not with only concerts on the green, sculpture gardens, and art in the library, but they bring people out of their communities and districts down into the city. And I'd like to visit other districts in the city and see how we can add to their districts with our general plan and have people more integrated within the city limits.
Well, you can see from this that there's a lot of passion and there's a lot of diversity, just from these three members. And it's a large committee; there are 30 members or so. But when the steering committee was picking people, what we wanted geographical diversity. We didn't want any part of the city not represented. We wanted, an age diversity. We didn't just want the gray hairs like me coming out. And we wanted different backgrounds in professions and just interests. And we have that. But I think that's what you touched on, of learning from other of the committee members. And then also all of your meetings are public. So you will have a very enthusiastic and very willing to participate, I'm sure, members of the public coming in and commenting too, which will make it very interesting. Now your challenge is pretty different than what we had back in the one that was passed in 2006. And if you look at that, I don't know, have you read it or looked at it or portions of it, the general plan? Our current general plan.
I have.
Okay, so I'm very proud of it. I thought we did a good job. But if I look at it, to me, it's very much a 20th century plan. And we are now in the 21st century. So I think that's one of the interesting challenges, that your group is really going to set the course for all that's happened in the last, 20 years practically. And also, you're going to have to you're curtailed somewhat because the housing element has been already approved and state approved. And I can't just say, well, we don't like that, we're going to change it now. And as you will learn if you don't already know, all the elements of a general plan are equal. But it's sort of like the animal farm. Some elements are more equal than the others. And since the housing element has been state, that's going to constrain you a bit, I'm sure, as you get into it. But so let's look at some of the other elements, though. And there are a lot of them, but let's start with noise. Anything that you'd like to see in terms of concerns about noise in our city that you think the general plan might address? And it's all right if you don't. You can pass.
I actually hadn't thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to think about. I mean, there's a lot of sources of noise. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we have lots of sources of noise. We have our favorite airport,
Yes.
which is a constant battle, and that's a conflict within the city as well. I mean, different communities have different concerns over that, and so I hadn't thought about the interplay with the general plan and the noise elements. Something to think about. There's just the noise going down Pacific Coast Highway every day.
And the motorcycles.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's that. I have to learn about that. Honestly, I had never thought about noise in the general plan, but
Well, and that is, for me, that was really one of the fun things, because I really had fun on the general plan committee. I learned so. I thought I knew a lot. I mean, I've been working with the city as an advocate for quite a few years, and it was just like, oh, didn't think about that. Oh, and I'm hoping we're doing what we did last time. We bring in a lot of expertise to say, let's set the table for you before you start planning, so you really have a good background in areas you don't necessarily know.
I mean,
about.
I don't know anything about the people that we're working with on the committee yet. We haven't met.
Yeah.
Are there people on the committee that have served on the airport?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about noise?
On noise, I know that the airport's always been a hot issue. Again, like I was born on Diamond Avenue. The planes fly right over Diamond. I know it's top of mind for a lot of the neighbors there. At the same time, I love having an airport here that I don't have to fly out of LAX, so there's a lot of trade-offs there. But I really do think in the summer, there's a lot of people that drive down here on PCH. I live basically in Lido Village, and you can hear cars going up and down PCH probably far too fast. And I know Newport, especially in the Newport coast areas, has started to enforce some of those noise restrictions closer to Crystal Cove, but maybe there's something there. I don't have any strong opinions on noise, though.
Eileen, in here?
I think noise is an issue that needs a good review. The airport always is a work in progress with mitigating issues associated with the airport. But just thinking more about our community and how many planned communities we have noise in our neighborhoods on a personal level. Not all people have learned to live well. I've served on an HOA in leadership for 27 years, and
That's a glutton for punishment there.
and I've learned that we need to be good to each other, and we need to be respectful of people's quiet enjoyment. And living in a planned community is always a challenge. We live with 3-foot setbacks, and it adds up to about 15 feet between us. And everyone wants to enjoy their home and enjoy their community, but we need to be aware. We need to raise awareness within the City Council, within our committee, within our community commissions and the like, to let people know that there are issues that need to be mitigated. And I think they need to be addressed. And I think the airport is a good one. I think the inter-community mitigation issues and noise and traffic are others. And I'm sure there are more than that we don't even know about. And I'm looking forward to learning more about that on the committee and adding to the quality of life in Newport and making it a better place to live only as a member of the committee.
You all touched on recreation. And I mean, we live here. We're all mostly outdoors, always trying to do something fun. And is there some area where you feel that the city really is lacking and you'd like to see the general plan address it?
Well, after bringing up 3 kids through here, I've had a little bit of a frustration on maybe the quality of recreation facilities available, especially on the other side of the bay over here.
Yeah, you guys have been cheated.
We have no decent recreation facility. The fields that the kids play on are either the spare Newport Harbor fields or the Edison field or Ensign fields, and it's not the same when you come over here. So that's kind of a frustration. I think the city really hasn't put that together. But it's hard. I mean, it's a land issue.
Yeah.
It's where do you put these things? And I think that's one of the things that as we look forward to living in the future in our communities is like we're having a real land issue and the availability of affordable land to put these kind of facilities because they're not money makers, and we have the housing crunch and population expansion pushing in on these areas, and I think that's a real concern that the city's going to have to address.
I very, very much agree with that. As someone who will be bringing up kids in Newport, I think a good example is, even the Sunset Park. I was kind of watching the hearing on Sunset Park, but building 2 fields and you can only use one of them. Like, let's maximize the space that we have. And for me, when I think of recreation, I think a lot of how I surf a lot, how I use the beaches. Going back to resilience and sustainability, I think a lot about sand erosion here, and that's a concern that I have, especially for those of us who live kind of close to the peninsula, is getting a pulse on how healthy our beach volume is. We've drilled a little bit into it on the Water Quality Coastal Tidelands Committee, but the answer that I continue to get is we don't necessarily know how bad our sand erosion problem is in certain parts of the peninsula. Maybe there's something that's worth looking at there, because outside of structured team sports, I think a lot of us really enjoy the beaches here and want to be able to keep doing that.
An interesting aspect of that, of the whole sand issue, is that not the last time, but some years ago, when the Army Corps of Engineers was dredging the mouth of the Santa Ana River, which it does from time to time, the whole question was where to put the sand. And it was cheaper for them to put it right on the beach, and they were going to fill in the groin fields.
Yep.
And of course the surfers complained, but nobody cares what the surfers say. But it was the homeowners, a lot of them, that complained because, one, they didn't want to walk further. But it was just like, we don't need any more sand.
Yeah.
So you're going to run into that sort of thing, because I think one of the issues with this was pointed out with climate change is we always have something in front of us that's immediate. Right now we have, if you're living in Santa Barbara, in Montecito, you've been told to get out of your house.
Yeah.
You're not caring about anything else right now. You're caring about that. And in a city or in a state, at federal level, there's always that emergency. So it often gets in the way of our planning down the road. And I think if you said to people, well, in 20 years, you're either going to have to evacuate your home on the peninsula or build a seawall 6 feet high. They go, okay, let's put some more sand on.
Yeah.
You know, so part of it's education. Arlene, as far as recreation, do you think there are things that we lack?
Well, I think we're addressing the pickleball issue and needing pickleball courts in almost every
definitely.
neighborhood. We're about to have them in Newport Coast, and we're very excited about it. I think that life is always changing every day, and what was popular 20 years ago, and just being on the water on your boat and perhaps paddleboarding and the like, every day new things are coming into the community. New people coming into the community, many new people coming into the community. Our living situation is all changing. We're having multiple families living in one house. That it's just that the way that the economy is right now. And then other parts of the city, and I know I'll address that recreation issue in a minute. I think that we as a city keep meeting challenges with the recreation, and the city does a lot of research to find out what's best for the entire community, and then they dig deep within the community to find out what everyone in the neighborhood feels about it. So I'm looking forward to more recreation and new ideas. I think our Parks and Rec department does a great job with promoting recreation within the city and the programming that's available. But I just think it's beautiful the way that things are unfolding, from tennis to pickleball, and everyone is addressing it and doing a good job, and the community's happy with it. And let's see what tomorrow brings. We'll probably have changes while we're serving on the committee. Is there a new recreation? Well, I don't think we have to worry about skydiving and things like that here. But I can't think of a new recreation right now that we haven't addressed. I'm on the Arts Commission, so the Parks and Rec does more of that. But I'm looking forward to hearing from the members of the community and traveling more in the years to come to see what's happening in other communities and how we can add to the recreation in our community with new ideas to make people here happy and drive in resources from other areas to our community to recreate.
I think you touched on something also that I'm sure that Kurt can attest to. You haven't had as much contact with staff, but to me it was always just amazing that how many of our staff are so invested in whatever. I mean, the recreation people are so invested in recreation and getting people, and the water quality people, the people who are doing that, are really into it. I mean, it's not just a job. They don't come at 8 and leave at 5. They're often there, on the weekends doing stuff, and it's just, that is really pretty interesting to see how much, and you'll see that, I think, as the thing. And the other thing that's amazing too is they have to go to all these meetings. I don't know how they ever get all their all the rest of their work done. One of the things that either you know or you suspect about the city is most people don't care. And I don't mean they don't care in the sense of who cares where I'm living. It's that Newport Beach is a very well-run city. And so, the streets are paved, the parks are well kept, and so they focus on Washington, where nothing's, everything's in disarray, and except for a small group. There are a couple of hundred of us that, totally into the whole thing, go to the city council meetings and everything. But this general plan isn't going to affect just those few people that are paying attention. It's going to affect the whole community. So, thoughts on better ways we can get out there and let these people know so we can hear from them as well, because it's what's happening in the next 10, 15 years is very much going to affect them. So, Lori, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a hard thing to do. I almost think it needs to be sort of a grassroots thing that's going to come from the 30 people that are serving on the committee. Because like you said, I mean, people around here, probably 95% of the people aren't going to see this interview.
That's right.
Okay? And it's because people take for granted that we live in a city where everything works. And I think we really need to communicate to people where we live in our neighborhoods, our schools, or wherever we are, that, look, there's changes that are coming that we don't necessarily have control over unless we start standing up and taking a role in what's going on in our city and expressing our concerns and what's important. So we need to be a little bit more vocal and active and not as such a passive, community. And otherwise, in 10 years, it might not be like this. So I think it's a grassroots thing is probably going to be the most effective, and I do think it starts with us to try and talk to our friends and communities and get their input.
Kurt, you've been a lot of messaging lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and I would kind of challenge the premise in a sense. I think people do care, but they don't have the information that they need to form an opinion or take action. And what I've found is when I've gone back to the groups that I'm a part of, and for me, I come from a background in technology, and I have a community here of others who like operate or run tech companies and want to see that grow here in Newport. When you bring some of these issues to them and you just tell them about what's going on in the city, all of a sudden they care. And I agree. I think it's probably a grassroots or a grass tops effort. Hopefully the 30 people on GPAC are from diverse enough communities that they can bring what's going on back into their community and then pull some of those people into the meetings and bring public comments. But I think there's creative ways to do it through people using their own social media profiles. Hopefully we can kind of be the engine that does that, the 30 people that are on the committee. But it is a challenge. I think a lot of it is just getting the information out there because, frankly, people are reading, national news. They're not reading necessarily the Orange County Register or whatever it is, which can be a challenge to get the information out.
Okay. Arlene?
I feel we're always challenged in trying to reach out to the community and hear back from them. Having served on the Arts Commission and on EQUAC, it's nice to hear from people, but they do not always know, as you've said, what's happening in the city. And part of that is that winter time in the city. Here we are today, and the weather's inclement, and our green is being redone. But the city, we have recreation that brings people out into the public areas of the city in summer, but we need some vehicle for increasing the number of seats that we have in our city in the winter for recreation. The library is doing that, reaching out with the new lecture hall to add more seating, but typically in our city, the seating that we have available is no more than 225 to 300 seats, and we're a city of 80,000 plus people. So finding places where we can come out into the city and meet each other and talk about things that are going on in the city. I think the town halls are very useful, and I hope we'll have some of those, while we're serving on this committee. But I think reaching out as well, not only through town halls, but maybe reaching out into homeowners associations. You have the largest in the city, which is the Corona Del Mar Residents Association, to let people know what's happening, and not to be hindered by having to become a member, but just knowing what's going on. People are knowing what's going on in our city through Nextdoor. They're knowing what's going on through Stu News. But our newspapers seem to be, people are falling away because of social media, and we have to find ways of building our social media to be a larger network and more inclusive. Inclusive is probably the name of the game, and finding a way to do that. I don't feel, just having served on these committees and commissions since 2006, I think that we need to reach down to the low-hanging fruit in the school districts. Children are a great vehicle for getting the word home.
That's for sure.
And we have learned that, whether it's the film festival or something we're doing here at the Newport Beach Art Exhibition or concerts on the Green, when we send things home in the backpack through the schools, we seem to engage and we connect. So I'm looking forward to finding other ways to, connect, and also reaching out to the low-hanging fruit, because we are a family-oriented community.
All right, well, and just finally, and Laura, you certainly touched on it. We were presented by the state with regional housing needs assessment that said we need 5,000 plus new units, and basically half of them to be affordable. Now, we should say that in Newport, affordable is not what it is in some other areas, and a lot of us have talked about workplace housing so that the young first responders, maybe they don't have a family yet, but they're married and they can still live in Newport, so if an earthquake comes, there's somebody here to actually respond. Is there something, even though the housing element has been created and certified, is there something in terms of those numbers that you would like to see happen or that you have a particular concern about? Just sort of a general final thought on those, because it's tough.
It is tough. It's actually, I think it's scary, because it's something that's not going to stop. So we have our commitment for new housing for, is it the next 6 years that we have to meet that? And then what's after that? Because where do we put it? It's going to have to start going up, and then we have density issues and traffic congestion, and it kind of goes to the foundation of the lifestyle around Newport Beach, and it's going to be eroded. And those, I think those are really scary concerns, because I think that's something that Newport Beach has to band with other communities and push back at the state level. I think it's a scary thought that the state is taking away from the local power to do its zoning and planning, because people in Sacramento don't know what is going on down here. They don't know what's going on in Huntington Beach or San Diego. And I just think it's a real can of worms. And that's where I think that's the long-term problem. And I don't know how you really resolve that by looking at your general plan and going, well, we're going to have to put more a high-rise here condo thing in Fashion Island. I think we have to start looking back and banding with other communities and reach the state level and go, this policy can't work in the long term.
Well, you obviously know more about it than I, so I think I'll lean on you for thoughts there. But I do, I think it's a challenge, and the housing element has already been addressed. There's only so much that we can do. I think I don't know, for me, there's probably a core question of, one, can you push back at the state level? I think that's at least advocating at the state level is probably helpful. And then if you do have to cooperate with state guidelines, I think the question is, how do you spread affordability out? Do you spread it out throughout the whole city, or do you concentrate it somewhere? And I think as far as keeping kind of the core of what Newport Beach is, if we do have to cooperate with guidelines, the more I think that we can spread it out within reason rather than consolidating and making one area super dense might be a better way of kind of keeping the fabric of our community. But that's a challenging one.
Marlene?
I think we need to talk about mitigation with respect to housing. There are new things that are coming into the community, such as the Picasso developments that are adding and changing people's lives. And, has some of us wondering, and some of my friends that live down on the peninsula, addressing the fact that they have different people living in different houses several times of the year. And some of those people are not concerned about safety. And boats are floating away from the dock and out in the harbor, and other people are part of that residence as well. And safety in those areas needs to be addressed. I think safety also needs to be addressed with respect to housing. We need to have more communication at the state level who's leveling all of this, and maybe we'll have that now with a new member of the community having been elected to the assembly. We'll have a little more of a voice up in Sacramento. But I think it's important to let the states know how the impact of the housing issue and the qualifications within the state that we have to live up to provide additional housing, how is that impacting our community? We need to be looking at how that's impacting, letting them know how that's impacting our community, and address the safety issue. My nephew is a fireman, and I'm thinking if we start adding to a lot of the traffic, we need to address also the safety issue in the event of a fire, especially in Newport Coast because we're a red zone. We need to be able to have a plan in effect that everyone is aware of, because what good is a plan if everyone doesn't participate and you have an evacuation because of a fire? Thinking of Corona Del Mar. I'm so proud of our city in that since I have joined EQAC in 2006, have really addressed a lot of the issues with safety and adding people to the community and having more traffic. But I think there are others. I think the housing issue definitely adds to the safety concerns of the community, and I hope we'll address some of that in the general plan, especially in Newport Coast, where we live every day with the threat of fire.
The other thing is that the state is so much in conflict with itself. I mean, we want more housing. I understand that. But if say, we do have a water shortage, and those people aren't going to flush their toilets? Well,
Yes.
of course they are. And we want to, are you going to take up, as you say, open space for housing? Well, open space is where we sequester a lot of our emissions. So it seems a lot of times like, at least my experience on council was that each agency had its own mission. It was like, could you guys get together on it? Because there's a lack of just common sense at times that sort of frustrates us. But, thank you. I know you're going to enjoy your time, and I look forward to what you produce because it's our future. Well, that's our program. I urge you to follow the general plan process, to come out and communicate with the members, and we'll see what we have, because this is going to set the pattern for our city for the next couple of decades. All right? Until next time, let's all work on keeping our village green.